What is up, hikers and long-term world travellers? I'm Russell Hepton. Welcome to another episode of The Trail Hunter, and in today's video I'm going to be going over whether it's best to hike with or without a guide on the Everest Base Camp Trek. Let's go! For those of you who are new to my channel, I believe that the best way to explore the world is on foot. I'm offering you hiking video guides, gear reviews, gear lists, travel tips, hiking tips, and much more. So if you're new here, do consider subscribing. Okay, so in October, I embarked on a 2-week trip up to Everest Base Camp. It took me 9 days to get there and a further 3 to get back. Overall, the trail was very well maintained. There was no snow, it didn't rain, the weather was fantastic, so it is definitely possible to hike it on your own. I did see quite a few people hiking it alone without a guide, and it's not a very remote trail. There's tea houses and villages all the way along the path. So I thought I'd go over the benefits of hiking the Everest Base Camp Trek with a guide. I've also done a lot of treks on my own, completely solo, and I actually prefer that in a lot of ways. So I thought I'd go over all of the benefits and drawbacks of hiking with or without a guide for the Everest Base Camp Trek. So I think I can give you the opinion on both sides of the argument, even though I went up Everest Base Camp with a guide. So first off, let's go over all of the benefits of hiking with a guide. So the first benefit is that there's no need to navigate with a map and compass. Bring one anyway, but there's absolutely no need. You can simply enjoy the trek and watch the scenery pass you by. Another good benefit of hiking with a guide is that there's someone there to talk to and ask questions and learn more about the nature surrounding you. Another really cool thing is that the guide can get you priority over those without a guide when you get into the villages and the tea houses, and they can also order things for you. They can sort out all of your trekking permits and all of your checkpoints for you, so that you can just leave to the guide, no problem. I think my favourite benefit of having a guide is that they can purchase things for you, especially in places like Namche Bazaar, at the local prices. So when you go into a shop and you want to buy like a flask or an extra layer or something like that, don't go to the counter yourself, just ask your guide to go there and he'll purchase it for you at local prices, so you get things a lot cheaper. Also, language barriers aren't a problem in the local towns and villages, so if you have a question for a local or someone starts asking you questions, you can easily get your guide to translate for you. Another nice touch that I didn't really expect the guide to do, but my guide Kalyan did kindly anyway, was that he would actually serve my food for me. When it came out of the kitchen, he would get straight up and go to the kitchen, grab my food, and I literally didn't need to lift a finger, so a nice little touch. They can also arrange the meal times for you, so if you want breakfast or dinner at a particular time, they'll go up to the kitchen and request the meal time for you. The next benefit of having a guide is a really important one, and that is if something terrible happens or something goes wrong while you're on the trek, like the weather turns, you injure yourself, at least you've got someone there to help you. At higher elevations, you have no idea, unless you've done this kind of trek before, how the altitude is going to affect your body, so the guide can also advise you on when to take your altitude tablets for you, so that's a really good plus. I wouldn't want to go taking my altitude tablets willy-nilly but way before the trek or before I needed to, or taking one that was way too late, so the guide can definitely advise you on that. Another really good thing about going to Everest Base Camp with a guide is that you can ask them to carry a few extra things for you, especially at higher elevations when it gets a bit tough. My guide carried next to nothing in his backpack, so he was able to carry a couple of my dry bags with my electronics and a full bottle of water as well, so that was really handy. Okay, so we've gone over all of the benefits of going to Everest Base Camp with a guide. Now let's talk about some of the drawbacks. So one of the guide's responsibilities is to decide when you start trekking and when you stop trekking, when you take breaks. And this can get a little bit frustrating because sometimes you just want to wake up at a time that suits you. You want to go at your own pace in the mornings. A lot of the times they might be waiting for you, so you feel like you have to kind of hurry up and get ready a little bit quicker. Sometimes you might want to take breaks at a certain time. They might ask to take a break a little bit sooner than you might want to. So sometimes you actually have to communicate a little bit more with the guide when you would like to do something. So yeah, that would be my first drawback. Even though I was hiking with just myself and the guide, sometimes you do feel like you have to go at their pace. The guide is probably going to be much stronger than you in these higher altitudes, so they're going to be a little bit faster. Sometimes you might want to take a bit more of a regular break than they do. So yeah, you can easily feel like you have to go at their pace, but to be honest, it's not that big of an issue. Just communicate a little bit more about how fast you want to trek. And obviously there is one final drawback, and that is the price. It will obviously cost you a little bit extra to go to Everest Base Camp with a guide than without. I'm not entirely sure exactly on how much the guide cost because it was all inclusive in this package, but I'd assume that if you go by yourself, it's not going to cost as much. Now we've talked about the benefits and drawbacks of going to Everest Base Camp with a guide. Let's talk about what the drawbacks and benefits of going without a guide are. So I've hiked many trails without a guide, and it is personally my favorite way to trek. I much prefer the solitude, the fact that I can go at my own pace, I can pick and choose when I wake up and set up camp. It's definitely my favourite way to go. But obviously hiking at these higher elevations, you may want to consider going with a guide if you've never done this type of trek before. Okay, so let's crack on with the benefits of going without a guide. So my first benefit is that you can go at your own walking pace for the entire trek. As I know what it's like to hike on my own, there were points where I was kind of like, oh, I wish I was kind of on my own, and it makes the whole experience vibrate more. Everything's a lot more intense. You've only got yourself to rely on. So yeah, that would be one of the benefits of going by yourself. My next benefit would definitely be that you can plan your entire day and the entire trip at your own schedule. So you can get up when you want, you can go to sleep when you want, you can take breaks when you want, you can hike for as long as you want to, you can chop and change the plan, you don't have to ask anyone else. I think this would definitely make the experience a lot more enjoyable if you're on your own. But to be honest, going with the guide schedule wasn't too much of a chore. I think you just got to push yourself anyway. Another good thing, of course, is that you would save on the cost of guide if you didn't have one. Next, of course, you would get to your towns and your villages, and you can pick and choose which hotels you want to stay in. You can go and check them out, take your time. When I was going with Kalyan, my guide, into some of the villages, either we hadn't booked already, so we had to go around a couple and they would pick for me, or if there was a choice, I'd just have to go with the one that he picked. Most of the time it would be mainly because I was thinking, oh, maybe he's picked the best one, but you just never know. So at least if you're on your own, you can kind of take your time and pick and choose where you stay every night. One of my favourite benefits of not having a guide on these types of treks is that you can enjoy the solitude in the environment that you're in and just really take your time and soak it all in. I do find hiking by myself is like a form of meditation for me, and being that I'm on my own, I can just really take in the experience. So yeah. My next benefit of going without a guide is that there's no emotional ties with anyone. So what I mean by emotional ties is you're not worrying about what they're thinking, you're not worrying about how tired they are, you're not worrying about whether they're getting annoyed with the weather or the cold. You've only got yourself to worry about, so that's a really good point as well. But above all, my favourite thing about going on treks by myself, and if you're planning your Everest Base Camp trek, is that you're more open to speaking to other hikers and especially other locals. So a lot of the locals in that area can speak English, so you'll be a lot more accustomed to opening yourself up, going to speak to people and asking them questions, and you'll get to probably meet a lot more people if you're on your own, if that's what you want to do. Whereas if you're with a guide, you're probably going to be more comfortable just sitting with the guide and talking to him, and you won't meet as many people along the way. So if you're on your own, you probably will. Okay, so now we've talked about some of the benefits of going without a guide, let's talk about some of the drawbacks. Okay, so obviously my first drawback is that you don't get any of the benefits that you would with a guide. It will actually be much harder to communicate with the locals. And another thing is that you will actually have to do everything yourself. So if you're used to hiking on your own and you do wild camping, or you've stayed in hostels and you're used to traveling, and this is more of a long-term thing for you to do, then you'll probably be more accustomed to doing everything by yourself anyway. Whereas if this is like a once-in-a-lifetime trip for you and it's more like a 2-week excursion and you're probably not going to do this type of trek again, going with a guide actually might be more beneficial to you because you can get all of the benefits there, such as them serving your food, helping you out with talking to locals and organising all of the permits. So yeah, you will have to do everything yourself. And lastly, the final drawback of going without a guide is if anything goes wrong, you will be completely alone. There are a lot of people trekking up to Everest Base Camp that time of year between October and November, but if you find yourself in one of the more remote areas like between Dingboche and Loboche, and you say sprain your ankle, you injure yourself, or something goes wrong, you will be completely alone. I would advise if you go up to Everest Base Camp on your Todd, then let people know where you are and at what time. or bring something like a spot device with you so you can check in with people back home very easily via a satellite connection. So overall, in my opinion, it's definitely more beneficial to go on the Everest Base Camp Trek with a guide, even if you're experienced, and especially if this is your first time trekking in the Himalayas. The language barrier won't be so much of a problem. If something goes wrong and you get altitude sickness, you've got someone there to help you. If you injure yourself, someone's also there to help you. So it's the safer way to go with a lot less worries. I definitely recommend going on this trek with a guide. Okay then folks, if you enjoyed this video and you found it at all useful, then hit that thumbs up. If you've been on the Everest Base Camp Trek before with a guide or without a guide, do let us know in the comments section how you found it, and if you were to go again, would you go either way? Also folks, I'm going to be uploading videos just like this one about 3 or 4 times a week, so do hit the subscribe button below for those videos. I hope you enjoy them. Once again, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.